Welcome to the Athlete's Compass podcast. Each week, renowned sports scientist and founder of Athletica AI, Dr. Paul Larson, athlete, coach, and sports scientist Mariana Rakai, and coach and cyclist Paul Worlowski discuss training, racing, and improving your health and fitness. Get ready for your journey to peak performance. Hello and welcome to the Athlete's Compass podcast, where we navigate training, fitness, and health for everyday athletes. We are excited today to welcome Tenille Hoogland to the show to talk about endurance training for women in perimenopause and menopause. Tenille runs the Applied Athletes coaching business as well as the Element Racing team and has a decorated career as an athlete event planner and coach. Hello, Tenille, and welcome. How are you? And can you catch us up on what's going on in your world today?
Oh, it's so fun. Thank you so much for the introduction and for having me. It's absolutely brilliant. How am I? I'm great. I have to say, what is new in my world? I started back in at swim club. I'm part of a swim club. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, getting serious, and
Nice.
It's been really fun. Like I realized how much I missed it. So that's what's exciting in my world. And in my athletes world, it's just, we're in transition. A lot of people are finishing their triathlon, peak races, and some of them are, just ramping up until the late races. And then we have others going into cross season. We're having a lot of fun and just constantly being in this dynamic environment of who do we want to show up as, what do we want to show up, and maybe some of it, some people are just kind of coasting through and showing up whenever they just kind of feel like it. So that's where we're at.
Tenille, you talked about in your content about being, quote, in health, unquote. What do you mean by that in the context of the everyday female endurance athletes? What does in health mean to you?
It's a beautiful question. I think if people understand and have been following the Athlete's Compass and have gotten to know Mariana a little bit, they also will encounter a similar story for me and when I was a professional athlete and understanding what does it mean to be in health. And what is the foundation of performance and then particularly to the discussion that we're having about athletes in perimenopause and in menopause, what does that mean when everything feels like it's changing, like this idea of what feels like what you feel as strong, what you feel as your body, and for many women, not all, that road is a lot more bumpy for others. So what is it? So you're coming to your question, what is health? And I think that there's the experience of health is being able to adapt. In my mind, it's being able to adapt to stressors and the stressors that we want in our life, such as training, and the ones that are everyday in terms of, work and family and the pressures that come maybe from systemic, environmental, and that we can adapt to those stressors well or bounce back quickly and know how to support our body through it and our mind, of course, because they're connected. And so that's what I think of as health, is maybe not always getting it right because the journey is not smooth. It's not straight. It's not predictable, particularly in perimenopause. Weren't just like when, if for any of the parents out there, you weren't given a manual of like, this is how to parent this particular child. We're not given necessarily a manual on this is how you're going to go through perimenopause. And if you just do these things, everything will be fine. It's a continuous learning. So health is really about a mindset. It's also about the ability to pull on levers that you have.
Yeah, I love that that definition, Tenille. Yeah, resonates well with me. Also, like personally right now, just with going through a personal stress in my life, and there's some things I'm noticing. I'm not actually absorbing my stress as I used to.
I'll jump right in here because to give listeners a little bit context, Tenille used to be my coach when I first started Ironman journey, and I remember she was always talking about health. You got to be health first. You can't perform if you're not healthy, and I was ignoring it. I was just so tunnel visions. Do the workouts and do some extra. And as we all know, that led to overtraining, and I wasn't healthy, and I wasn't absorbing anything, and I was constantly, not feeling good, but still just kept on the same wrong way track. But Tenille's message that you need to be healthy first, and of course Paul's been drilling that into me and giving me some of the tools to how to do it. But it's also, I have to say, Tenille, you are really good with the psychology and the mindset. And you planted some seeds that I afterwards realized as I was crying and feeling, self-pity on the couch when I couldn't train, that health has to come first, that I can prioritize that. And being healthy allows me to fly across to a world, do Ironman, which was extremely difficult, fly back, jet lag both ways, and here I am. But I think that health aspect it has to be on the driver's seat, and it is a mental thing because we often just ignore it. We need to get the work done, and so what if we're, a little bit unhealthy? I mean, is doing Ironman healthy? Probably not. So it takes some time to recover from.
For some women, coming into perimenopause is a rude awakening of, holy shit, I don't always have control. And I can't control this. My hormones are changing. And we don't remember in our teenage years because we think we're, super like in our teenage years, the whole attitude, we're going through incredible hormone change as well, but there's a whole different vitality around it where we can skip, can we or can't we is debatable, but we can push through, the teenager can push through maybe not sleeping as well and be okay, but that's not what's on offer in perimenopause. And so this idea of what are we willing to absorb and listen to be in health, I mean, that was the original question, is completely different. And how does it come into face with what are the tools? And we're wiser, thank goodness. Like Paul was mentioning, it's like, I've got levers. Well, that comes out of wisdom. It comes out of having put yourself to the line, having done hard things. And now we get to be more adaptable and smarter and hopefully really listen to the situation that we're in.
Like mechanistically, what's happening here to the human female, Tenille? This is a reduction all of a sudden in the ovarian follicles as we age, right? And then there's a cascade of hormonal shifts and symptoms accordingly. Do you want to expand on any of those?
Yeah, the way I actually, I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, and there's a couple things. So physiologically, it's a shift and we're having hormone change. That hormone change is, if we think about, I would just want you to think of a line and then it going up rapidly. Like you have estrogen, which is coming up, and it can be up to 1,000 times more than you're used to. Like, it's insane how much estrogen can increase, creating this sense of estrogen dominance, and then it rapidly falls, and then it comes up, and there's not a lot of smoothness to the process of perimenopause. And then we have progesterone that is really reliant on this idea of this developing follicle, and then it becomes a corpus luteum, and then it releases this beautiful progesterone that is intricately connected to the yin and the yang of estrogen. And so over time, what is happening is our estrogen is falling, our receptibility to estrogen is decreasing, and therefore how our body is working is shifting as well. So that's the physiological. Hormones are changing. I think that the other thing that I want to really point out at this time is that we're changing. Like the 40s, the 50s, and then into the menopause, there's a real, like, just like any human, is that we are coming into, depending on when you, if you have families and what's going on in your family life. I have young kids. Other people have, their kids are becoming teenagers, depending when you got started. But there's also this sort of embodiment of I'm coming into my own. I have something to say. I am at the age where I have an expertise. Like, I've worked really hard to develop an expertise. And so you're pushing on that front of career potentially, or, ways of thinking, or supporting your family. And I think that there's something really important to acknowledge, is that for the woman in perimenopause, it's all there. Life is full. And there's a lot of stress coming in, and to just to say there's this physiological thing, it's happening, it's real, we need to address it. But there's all these other priorities that we have tugging on us that we want to make happen. And I don't want to just look at the hormonal change that's occurring, because it's as equally changing in other aspects of our life that are impacting how we adapt to stress, how we want to create stress. Yeah.
Totally. That resonates a lot with me. Like, so your kids are a little bit younger than mine. I'm hitting, perimenopause as my daughter is becoming a teenager. So we are kind of like all over the place. We have a really tight bond. And it's so funny. She's just like me, but it also creates a lot of potential crashes as we go through these changes. It's kind of ironic that we're going through, and Paul, your daughter is teenage too. I don't know if you noticed with your wife and daughter, their relationship could
Definitely
be
changing.
Yeah. And I think that it's so beautiful, Tenille, that you address that, because we have our plates full, and being an athlete, and how do we navigate the life and try to aim for balance, which I know is very fleeting as we navigate this period. And I wanted to highlight also that perimenopause also can start, as you know, Tenille, in 30s. Do you want to talk to us about your transition from like pro athlete, and how did you get interested in coaching for perimenopausal and menopausal athletes specifically?
So I was a triathlete. Well, originally I was actually a synchronized swimmer, so that's why water was my first love, and getting to know and how to be in water. So then, fast forward, became a triathlete, and just like, why wouldn't I want to be a professional triathlete? It just kind of, it just one thing flowed into the other. But the actual reality was, I was 27 when I decided that I wanted to be the best athlete I could be. And so I had a huge break between I had wanted to go to the Olympics as a synchronized swimmer, big break, led active travel vacations on a bike around the world. And then I went to school, did a master's, did all the things, and then, got, started with the federal government, working for the Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games Federal Secretariat, and was inspired. They put videos on before all our meetings of like, don't you want to go to the Olympics? And I'm just like, well, maybe. 27 years old, why not? So I'm kind of can-do person. I thought that I was wise enough at that time to be able to do it right, quote unquote, there. And well, I relied on a lot on grit, and I didn't rely on health. And at that time, coaching wasn't where it is now, where I would have a much, much higher expectation with and utilizing the information that we have. We know things about relative energy deficiency in sport. There is no excuse for coaches to be pressurizing to lose weight. When coaches say power to weight, understanding really the nuances of what that actually means. We want to emphasize strength. We want to emphasize power. And how do we do that? We get that by ensuring that we're fueling properly. So at that time when I was in my, going for it, that wasn't really understood or wasn't part of the main conversation that coaches can have today if they're involved and following the information. So then what happened is I broke myself down really well, and I didn't have a period for 5 years, and I went into hormonal, just shut everything off. And when you shut everything down, you really, obviously you can encounter a lot of injuries. And so I was injured, and I had a mental, like I was flat, nothing left. I was just going through the motions to meet the needs of my sponsors. Really, I was a sponsored athlete with Specialized and some others, and that I just made it to races. Then I had to find health again, and I had to find sport again. And I also met the love of my life, and we wanted to start a family. So then I came into massive fertility challenges. And that's when I had to learn about hormones for the first time. Like understand, these things really matter in our life. And, injecting myself with fertility treatments and starting to really come into what did this mean? I had my first kid at 40. So I was then coming into and aware and being like, there's this thing called perimenopause, another opportunity to really go through crazy, like this time of hormones. And I wanted to know everything about it because I wanted to be in health so I could continue to love my sports and be active, because it's just part of me. It's just who I am.
I think you just nailed what you said there. Like, we have the stress and hormonal changes, and we love our sport. We want to keep doing it. And then together, like with your mindset, like you don't have to stop doing what you love to do.
Tenille, I've just been fascinated by your story. Thank you so much for sharing it. I was wondering if you might reflect a little bit. It's very interesting that you lost your period for 5 years there, right? And I'm sure you reflect on that, and knowing now, or what you do as opposed to then. Do you reflect on why that might have happened? Again, when it's so common, right? But it's like at the end of the day, stress was not being, you weren't in health, and stress wasn't being balanced, right? And we want to go physiology deep. We can talk about the HPA axis and how it interferes with the ovarian axis. But that was like, and it's kind of actually like a really nice barometer that women have to know when they're not a little bit, towards not being in health.
As I gained success, then I sought out. So I sought out more, being in environments that were higher level. And I moved to Austin, Texas, to just train. I left my job. I sold everything I owned. I made massive sacrifices to do that. And as I did that, it felt like the knife sharpened. And because I was an athlete, that I loved work. I love working hard. Hard work is not hard for me. And, I think about, it's my greatest strength and greatest weakness. And so what happened is I just wanted to keep sharpening the blade. And unfortunately, it kept cutting me as well. So what I mean by that is it was entirely related to the fact that, no, I was not bringing on the fuel on board. That I kept on equating the weight with performance. So if I was no longer performing, I had to drop weight. It was power to weight, right? So if my power started slipping, then it was my weight that needed to go down. It was just the way we talked. And I don't know if either like if that's how you remember those days, it sounds like it's not that long ago really,
No, it
but
wasn't.
it was, and people are still really suffering. And relative energy deficiency in sport is just like, I was at the female athlete conference in Boston. I guess they're starting it again in May, so it was almost 2 years ago, May. So, and that was, everybody was talking about relative energy deficiency in sport. That was the discussion, that we are female athletes as well as males for sure, but female athletes are simply not bringing in the fuel on board. That was it. What's interesting about perimenopause, and I'll bring this in, is that it is as much of an issue in perimenopause as it is for those younger, for when you're younger. And then when I was struggling, the challenge is that we've been dieting all our life, and we haven't been, the enforcement of fueling for your training wasn't, I mean, we're older, we're in our 40s, 50s and 50s now, so that history is still really strong, and that mindset we have to really disengage, like really kind of understand and come up against it and say, where is it that I have something on repeat here? Where is it that these mental ideas are getting in my way? The challenge with perimenopause is this overtraining, and perimenopause symptoms can sometimes look really similar. And so then what happens is like, oh, you're in perimenopause, you just need some more estrogen, or you can go to do hormone therapy, or you can, this is what's going on, when really you're just not eating enough. And you can smooth out a lot of the symptoms by ensuring that you're recovering well, that you're eating enough, that you're sleeping well, that you're managing your stress through mindset work. And mindset work can look have a lot of different ways of what it looks like. For me, mindset is going up and down a black line, for sure. I don't sit very well. So that's, finding your way around, how do I ground myself? Being in trees, another way. So the thing about, like, you asked about my experience, it's how do we disentangle and also come back to addressing the foundation, coming back to the health, right, where we started this conversation. What are the foundation of health parameters that we want to continuously stay in check on? Gut health. Like, that was one of the first things that started going when I was a professional athlete. It's just horrible. Like, if you find yourself not able to digest any food, there's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Oh, now I'm lactose intolerant. Now I can't eat gluten. Now I can't do that. I'm not saying that those things aren't because of other reasons, but one of the things is that robustness of constantly being without food, things are going to happen to your gut that aren't going to help you. Gut health has to be at the foundation of your health.
How do those nutritional needs change for women in their perimenopause and menopausal times? I mean, how, especially the athletes, what needs to change in their nutrition?
This is another thing I've been thinking about a lot, and it's, so I can easily say, oh, okay, we need to increase our protein. Okay, that's nice. Okay, everybody increase your protein. But is that really a change? Like, I like, when I think of what did I need to do as a high performance athlete in my 20s and 30s to respond really well to my training. Yes, I need to increase my carbohydrate, particularly to fuel for my training. But that is okay. So that's one thing, but that doesn't change either in perimenopause. When we think of high performance, and this is where it's really interesting, and the data keeps on and research is coming out, even for in your 20s and 30s, we need more protein to be able to adapt to the stress than what we have been traditionally told, especially as endurance athletes. So, if we look at the history, and I haven't done this, but I'd like to now that I think about it, is look at, some of the papers that the position statement. So you're looking at the Olympic and Paralympic committee, looking at their position statements for nutrition. Let's look at that 10 years ago. Let's look at them 20 years ago, and let's look at them today. The protein levels have continuously increased. They just have. And so so the question that you've asked, Paul, is saying, what are the nutritional needs for perimenopause? Increase your protein. Ensure that you have a wide assortment of beautiful carbohydrates that have lots of color. But Dr. Nikki Kay, brilliant woman, wrote Health, Hormones, and Human Performance. Really speaks to this. Is like, is it much, like, is it different? What do we need to provide our bodies? And at the end of the day, bringing attention to how we are actually doing things, and then what we need to provide in terms of our nutritional foundation, that's what we have to pay attention to.
Yeah, I'll jump in here a little bit. I don't like, I think when we're younger, we can get away with a lot more. I think as we get older, I've noticed also, like last year, I made a huge house cleaning effort, changing my diet. And I wouldn't say that it needs to be different from a teenage girl or in our 20s, 30s, when we're pregnant or after pregnancy. We should be eating all those colorful carbohydrates, make sure that we have healthy fats to support our immune system, our hormone production, everything, energy, and of course, protein. Traditionally, endurance athletes are supposed to not eat as much as, like, bodybuilder for protein, but now we know that that's not the case, and that we need more protein. But I don't know that the requirements or the advice we give to athletes should be any different from the young age as we transition into, reproductive years and beyond. Like, I think just focus on natural, healthy foods and, avoid the processed food. I think that's the simplest way to put it. And I've noticed a huge improvement in my health because I've changed my diet. And that's why I can recover from these crazy stresses that I put my body through.
Tenille, I was wondering about the context of training and your recommendations in the context of a perimenopausal or a menopausal athlete and whatnot that you manage. What is the general guidelines? So, say you've got an Athletica plan or any plan. How is there added advice that you give to your athletes in terms of how they should adjust training on a day-to-day basis?
So the way I think about this is, I think that I take from a number of people the guide, like how to learn and understand our bodies. I take from you, and the incredible learning on high intensity interval training or high intensity training generally. I take from Dr. Steven Seiler, 80-20, and I really love Steve Magnus. So my groundedness, my philosophy of training really comes from those three sources. And then layer on when I speak to those that are really trying to understand hormone in perimenopause and how do we need to train. And by this, I think of, what does it mean to stimulate and maintain our muscle mass? What does that actually mean when we also want to perform in an event? And I think where we want to come down to for the female athlete is variability matters a lot. And so, how is your body responding to a stress? Are we providing the variable stressors? And we can think about this in terms of periodization, or we can think about this in keeping the body like what do we want to do. And this is where I'm really excited about our discussion, is this idea of fatigue resistance, and this idea of how do we balance this desire to maintain this fast twitch fiber, this almost this sprint thing, this ability to go fast when our estrogen is starting to come down, and the body just wants to go, no, I really just want to go long. Oh, do I really want to do that sprint? Now, half of that is our brains. I have no idea if it's half of that. A lot of that, I'll just say, a good portion of it is just like, hey, I'm older, I don't need to go that fast anymore. Like, we have this idea of, and truth be told, like, our body isn't as, the ligaments and the tendons are, I have interviews and the experts are just like, just think of a dry elastic band, and they just don't spring anymore. So this desire to actually do this fast twitch work is rightfully our brains are kind of in this protective mode of going, well, that's maybe not such a great idea. So we have this. So your question is like, what needs to change or what do we need to think about in perimenopause and beyond? Just like any other athlete, we want to think of, well, what are our goals? What are we actually trying to do? And then how do we show up for those goals in the best way possible, understanding what might be changing, not just in terms of our muscular load, but also in terms of our brains wanting to, well, I don't really want to go fast anymore if I just, stay steady. So I know in one of your podcasts, you were talking about, there was a question from one of your listeners, and it was talking about, do I do the 4x4s or do I do the 30-30s, and how do I do this? And you responded, and I take from you is this like, well, you were talking about an athlete that you were training and saying, well, there was a hill that we had to know how to do. It was about 4 minutes long, and they had to do it repeatedly. Well, guess what, people? Get in your brain. You can do it. Right? And so there's this real push and this pull of like, well, what is it again, coming back to what your earlier question was, is what are your whys? I have athletes, and in my programming, it's like, it's for lifestyle. It's for, I just want to stay healthy and be able to run after my kids or my grandkids or whatever you're after. I want to be able to do the hikes or the rides with my friends and not feel like I'm like shot out the back at all. I want to be able to hit that hill, and I just want to be able to do it and not feel like I'm dying at the top. And that's lifestyle. There's these other athletes that I have. It's just like, I want to be as fast as freaking possible. I'm not done. I don't want to just finish anymore. I've got something to say here. And those are two different programs, and variability has to still come into both. But the specificity for which you were talking about to your athlete of just like, let's make sure we mentally can know that we can do those 4-minute repeats or stay at that, like Dr. Steven Seiler is saying, okay, yeah, we want 80-20, but if you're preparing to hold a pace, you want to mentally have the confidence that you can hold the pace. So do some pace work, not all the time. It's exhausting, but do some. So you can get into the brain set, the mindset that you can do these things.
To the fluctuation in the hormones and I'm imagining again with a wife in perimenopause, there's the mood swings that happen and whatnot on a day-to-day basis like that. Notwithstanding the goals are very clear with what you're sort of saying, but on is there a day when you would pull back and switch things up based on how you feel, or how do you help your athletes navigate those kinds of questions?
Yeah, a really good question. So one of the things that I learned, and when I was training in Kenya, so I decided I wasn't an excellent runner. I needed to always be faster in my running. And so where did I go? I went to Kenya, because why wouldn't one go to Kenya to run faster?
Yeah.
And so there I was in A10, and what I really learned in Kenya was that time is not linear there, it's circular. And this was my take. This is this white woman who goes to Kenya and like just wants to learn everything. And so this is what I was able to take from it, is that in Kenya, nothing happens when it's scheduled to happen. So you always have to be ready for the next, like, tomorrow is fine. So in saying this, what I want to instill in my athletes is that we don't want to give ourselves a free pass. Like, we want to make sure that, are we able to rise to the challenge? Yes, it takes consistency is still key in any training experience. But when it comes to perimenopause, there are going to be days that you want to give yourself trees. You want to give yourself the stress load is up. You're just not there. You're not going to have a good workout. If you're not sure, then try 5 minutes. You guys have heard that. You've said that to your own athletes before. Try 5 minutes, then go. So understand that your way of being, if you're an athlete, your way of being is that you do this because you love it. If you're showing up and you feel empty, you're mad at the world, your hormones are just, you don't know what's going on, but you're aching, you haven't slept, you're mad, you don't have any emotional adaptability. Like, basically, Paul, it's all your fault, no matter what you do. Like,
yeah, you know my life now. Yeah.
you know what's me? Because then bringing yourself up in that cortisol spike, you might not get what you're going. You're just kind of going, like, think about cortisol as this, like, it's like a rather than a hit, right? When we hit the hit, you want to feel like it's energizing, that you're coming into it. So that's where you want to, let's not settle. I don't want my athletes to settle.
Oh
Awesome
my
answer.
God.
Awesome.
You just nailed it. And just, I had such an amazing training block up to about 5 weeks in, and then wheels started to go, like, fall off. Had family vacation. I was at the like, I had a massive training block. Everything was smooth, and it's so easy to be grateful when things are, running smoothly and you're feeling like you're in control. But when little, domino bricks start to fall, then it's just like, whoa. And I still had a bunch of work to be done. And one of the last weekends, not too long ago, so this is still fresh in the memory, I had massive day. And after that massive day, I still had a long run the day after, but I was just so drained, and I just pushed it one day. Remember, Paul?
I totally remember.
Yeah, just go for a walk, recover, hit it again next day. So there is tomorrow, like, it doesn't, like, if the plan is there, yes, but you have to learn to listen to your body, and the mindset, and your self-talk is so freaking important. Because I remember I was asking on the Wednesday heat session WhatsApp group, Paul W, you remember, I was like, oh, what's your best ways to motivate yourself to do another 6-hour trainer, right? Any tips appreciated, because motivation was kind of, on the downward slope. And at that moment, I should have, like, respected that and pulled back a little bit. But when you have the drive and you have the date, World Championships are coming, you want to do well, it is so hard to pull that, the handbrake a little bit. And then shortly after, I got, head cold. But it's just like,
which slows you down. Like, your body's so freaking smart.
It will sit your ass down. It will.
When you're in and coming into perimenopause, or, and you're in the beyond, it is learning how to listen to your body and not make assumptions. Learning how to listen to your body and know that the body you have today may be different than the body that you had yesterday, because it's not straight. If you think, oh, finally I got these hot flashes, like, totally under control, guess what? They might come back. And that's what I'm dealing, like, with some of my athletes. It's just like, oh man, they come back every 6 months, and then the evaluation is like, okay, well, what's happening at that time? Like, is there something else in life that is occurring that is bringing that stress load up just so much that to the level which your body is just like, oh, I really want that estrogen, or I want that progesterone, and I can't deal with it right now. Let's have some hot flashes. Like that's the way our body's going to respond. So then we think, again, coming back to health, is like, what can I do to manage my stress?
Yeah.
It might take a little bit longer to recover from a certain session. If you have this bread and butter session that you've done for years, it might actually take a little bit longer to recover from. And that's where the listening becomes so important, and communication with your coach, or if you have a coach, just, move things around. Go for a swim, go for a walk, do something soul food, like give yourself a break.
Yeah.
Well, this was just an amazing conversation, Tenille. Can't thank you enough. So as I sort of reflecting and whatnot on the conversation, we spoke about the female physiology and the inevitability of reaching that age, late 30s, even 40, 50s. We go through this menopausal time where there's clear hormonal changes. We're seeing changes in the fluctuations of estrogen and progesterone, and they cause added havoc on the mind of an already stressed out woman, right? In various different times, right? So it's like a confounder in all of this. So and there's other issues that are along the way. We spoke a lot about with whatever question you might have in this area, be very clear for yourself on your why, and let that drive your your decisions. We spoke about it, the classic 80-20 balance in terms of your aerobic, anaerobic kind of amounts that you want to have in your training. We spoke about being able to call an audible on a given day if things aren't right, and how there's always tomorrow. And just at the end here, we spoke about nutrition being, don't ever starve yourself. Fuel your cells as they need to be fueled, and listen to the little man or woman in your head that's telling you to eat because it's probably right. So listen to that. And then finally, the importance of being strong, all of us, and having a bit of strength and conditioning into the system.
I think the only thing I would add is that I want every human to know, but particularly the female athlete in perimenopause and in menopause, is that your body is your ally. It is so phenomenal, and it is always working for you. So it's whether we are trying to listen and support our body, and that's our job. So that's the connecting piece that I think that is hard, but it can be so rewarding. And to really hone in on that, like, your body is strong, your body is capable, and what we get to do is listen and to support, and to what is in my head is kick ass, like kick ass, because that at the end of the day, that's how when we feel strong, we can take on the things that we love and we're passionate about. So that's the only thing I would add.
Yeah.
All right, Tenille, thank you so much. That was an amazing conversation. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it, how much I've learned as well. That is all for this week.
Definitely.
Join us next week on the Athletes Compass podcast. Ask your training questions in the comments or on our social media. And if you enjoyed this episode, we'd appreciate it if you would give us a 5-star review for, Tenille Hoogland, for goodness sake. That deserves 5 stars. For more information or how to schedule a consultation with Paul, Mariano, or myself, check the links in the show notes. For Tenille Hoogland, Mariano Rakai, and Dr. Paul Larson, I am Paul Worlowski, and this has been the Athletes Compass podcast. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Athletes Compass podcast, your North Star through the sometimes complicated world of training for your endurance sport. We appreciate your comments and training questions and your 5-star reviews. For a deeper dive into the science of endurance sports, listen to the Training Science podcast and check out the adaptive AI training platform Athletica.ai. Thanks for listening.